So the final home game of the regular season then was against Stoke, and we were promised a reaction to the thumping at Leicester. So, of course, we got one of the dullest games of the season and a 1-0 defeat. I guess, Glenn, we have to start with the lineup. Russell Martin pledged to pick only players who were really willing to fight for the final 2 games of the season. So what were your thoughts when that team news was announced at 2:00?
Yeah, those words rang a bit hollow, I thought. I think it's ended up being a soundbite that he said whilst probably very, very fed up about the Leicester performance, and he probably rocked up the day afterwards and settled, calmed down a bit, had a cup of tea, and thought, well, I can't really do that because I haven't got that many options. So I think he went for the option of resting a few and trying to pick a lineup that gave people with something to prove, a chance to do that. And the most interesting thing for me was David Brooks playing in midfield, which is something that we spoke about last week. Overall, I thought he did okay, but there's a balance issue with him in there because he is so lightweight. There is a bit of an issue there. So I do think if he's going to play there, that you have to have 2 players with a bit of physicality about them in the rest of the midfield. So I think that was a kind of a qualified success. I thought he was okay without ripping up any trees, sort of thing. But yeah, when I saw the forward line, Fraser, who's gone right off the boil, Edozie, who's gone right off the boil, and Mara, who's never been on the boil, I just thought, who's going to score a goal in this? Yeah. Who's going to score a goal in this? So it didn't surprise me. I mean, Adams and Adam Armstrong are our 2 best forwards, and without either of those playing, then it was always going to be tough. But the game itself was, the first half was so boring. We didn't really do anything. Stoke should have scored in about the first 10 minutes when that guy missed an open goal. When the McCarthy made a save. We should have had a penalty. I mean, Sekou Mara's headed that. It's going towards goal, and then the keeper's he's punched him in the face. I mean, it's how that's not a penalty is totally beyond me. That might have made the game different. But then we concede, and it's a terrible goal. It's a floated ball over Jack Stevens, which happened quite a few times in the game. Whether they noted that as a weakness, don't know, but they just floated it over his head. Harwood Bellis came across, and he didn't get close enough to he tried to force him sort of like down the line, but didn't get close enough to him to have a chance of blocking the shot. So it didn't look particularly good from him, and it went straight through McCarthy's legs. He almost looked like he wasn't set for the shot to me. So it was, I think it was poor all round. Second half, that we made a couple of subs at half time. And Joe Aribo did all right when he came on. Bednarek just slotted in place of Howard Bellis. But we still really didn't create much. Sam Edozie, I thought, did okay second half. He at least showed the ability to go at players and go past them. And we kind of needed that sort of risk-taking element because it was a little too safe, I thought, the entire game. But at the end of the day, we didn't really create many chances at all. And Stoke, McCarthy sort of made up for any part he may have played in that first goal, in that opening goal, by making 2 or 3 really good saves in the second half. So, he probably comes out of the game in credit. Stoke should have had a penalty as well. Jack Stevens brought him down. That was blatant penalty. How that wasn't given, I don't know. And the game kind of fizzled out. And we got 20 minutes out of Flynn Downs, which I guess was a positive. But yeah, it was kind of slim pickings. I just got a bit frustrated. I mean, Stoke played a pretty low block for most of the game, and once we took Brooks and Edozie off, I thought, we've lost the player who can pass it through the lines, and we've now lost the winger who can take on people and in a 1v1 and make something happen. So wasn't surprised that the last sort of 20 minutes played out with nothing much happening. So overall, pretty poor showing. I mean, the second half livened up a bit, but it still wasn't great.
5 changes, Alfie, but probably not the 5 that we thought. We talked about, obviously, Brooks coming in. We talked about maybe Joe Lumley as well playing in goal, but it wasn't the 5 changes that we were expecting necessarily.
No, and Glenn's absolutely right with his assessment. I did ask him after the game. I sort of paraphrased back to him what he said to me on Tuesday about only picking players that were sort of really willing to fight. And his response was that he effectively he's changed his mind. And when it comes to the playoffs, that'll be the qualifier. But it was purely just to rest some players, get some rotation. And we knew that would be the case because when we saw that it was Che Adams who came out of the team, Che Adams was the one player who we actually praised after Tuesday night for putting himself about a bit. So we knew that would be the case. And yeah, we got the performance that we probably expected from that lineup. And obviously it was a big surprise. There was not really any cohesion. It wasn't very smooth. I thought, Glenn, it was interesting you talk about the David Brooks role. You sort of saw it as a qualified success. And I think at the end of the day, they haven't really got any options in that position that have been tried and tested and proven. But Brooks was the only player who was looking to play the ball forward really in the first half, and his fault was really just inaccuracy, and it just none of the attempts actually came off. But he was trying to break the lines, was trying to do the Stewie Armstrong sort of thing. So again, I'd be happy to see that tried again. But he also missed the biggest chance of the game, in my opinion, for Saints anyway, when Samadozi pulled it back into the box. And it was just such a tame effort towards the goalkeeper. It could have just been wellied, and, you never know. So, it was really boring, wasn't it, if we're being completely honest?
Just dull.
A really, really boring game. And it looked like two teams who were in mid-table. So you wouldn't have thought that it was... you wouldn't have thought there was a team that's still going for promotion. And Stoke, to be fair, they've secured their status in the league for another season with that win. And they went to St Mary's. They had 35% of the ball, and they left with more shots, more attacks, more on target. We've seen that a lot of times this season. But I was very disappointed. At the end of the day, it's a rotated team, so we can't expect too much. But it's the last game at home. Give the fans a reason to get back on side. Russell Martin was saying after the game that he's worried the last week will have changed the way that fans have perceived the season. And it's kind of like, well, yeah, because the last week has been definitive in the season. So, that's why it's changed the way it's been perceived a little bit, because you had a chance to maybe get over the line and you haven't quite. But the end goal doesn't change, as he says multiple times a week now. The end goal is still the same. They've still got a few games to win. They'll go up. But overall, I think everybody there was really disappointed, and that was reflected by the fact that there was a small minority of people left to applaud the players around for their lap of honour at the end.
Steve, that means it's 3 defeats in a row now. Have we learned anything more after this latest one? Did we come away knowing anything we didn't before?
No, I don't think so. I mean, it was interesting given all the comments during the week after Tuesday that we seem to strangely lack leadership once again, despite bringing our fearless leader back into the team. There wasn't an awful lot on display from anybody really. Quite frankly, it was pretty tame stuff. Proper damp squib in the second half with that horrible rain coming down as well.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, guys, it's the end of April. What's going on? It's just depressing all round, really. And I guess the only kind of consolation is, frankly, all four of if we assume that Ipswich are likely to go up at this stage, then all four of the playoff teams are in pretty honking form, really. I mean, Norwich got away with the draw against Swansea yesterday. Swansea have been pretty ropey for most of the season. They've had nothing to play for months. West Brom got absolutely battered at Sheffield Wednesday, and they've now lost 3 on the bounce as well. So looking good. And of course, Leeds got spanked 4-0 at QPR on Friday night, which was, that was just absolutely extraordinary.
Funny.
Oh yeah, very, very funny. Of course it was, but it's kind of showing how. I think there's a lot more similarities between us and Leeds than people might like to realise in terms of the sort of fragile mentality. I mean, Leeds ended up getting relegated for a very good reason. It was, 1, they couldn't defend, and 2, they reacted terribly to setbacks. And I mean, you think, well, I mean, who else does that sound like? We don't react well in that situation. So we kind of, it's weird that we kind of have to be on the front foot, and yet for a large part of yesterday we really weren't. It was, Stoke were very quick up front and in wide areas, and I think that completely flummoxed us a little bit. Whereas the game at their place, I mean, we mentioned this after the Leicester game, that we thought that Sulemana might play in this one because he terrorised their fullback for 65 minutes on at their place. And yet he doesn't even get off the bench. I mean, seen a very weird, cryptic message on his social media.
Composing poems on social media.
Yeah, very odd. But I mean, I think we can take from that he's not wholly impressed at the situation. But at the end of the day, you've presumably not earned it. I mean, we've seen nothing in games for months that would justify him starting, other than, well, let's see what he's got. Which seemed to be the kind of rationale between sort of behind most of the lineup yesterday. But yeah, it's just bad timing for us to be on this sort of run where everybody suddenly gets a bit down and you get little sort of finicky arguments breaking out in the stands between people, and people just generally being a bit downcast and a bit fed up with it all. And it's like, well, I mean, we have still scored 86 goals this season, so it's not been a like the complete disaster that some people like to paint it as. No. But just, I mean, as Russell Martin rightly said, the timing of this run of stodginess couldn't have been worse. Because ultimately, if we don't go up, people will look at this run as the key ingredient of why we've failed. Whereas ultimately, that's probably not really the case. It's kind of the collective over the duration of the season, and ultimately, two maybe three teams being slightly better than us. But I don't know. I mean, we go into next week with kind of nothing resting on it. So there shouldn't be any sort of mental scars or anything for a game of any sort of magnitude. Leeds are the only side that might have something to play for. I mean, theoretically, they're going to still be live going into that game. Because even if Ipswich win Tuesday, the gap's 3 points and Leeds have a better goal difference. But as soon as if Ipswich take the lead against Huddersfield, then it's game over. And
because that'll get round.
And Leeds. I mean, as I say, Leeds have similar mental frailties as we do, and I certainly wouldn't back them in that sort of win or die scenario. Same as I guess we probably wouldn't back ourselves either. So that'll be a fun Wembley if we both get there.
I suppose the hope was, Glenn, that there'd be a couple of players that maybe play their way into the starting 11 for the playoffs. It just seems to me that I don't think we're any closer to knowing what that strongest 11 is, other than maybe Alex McCarthy starts, because that looks like that's going to be the case.
I think he's probably got a pretty decent idea of what the strongest 11 is. I think there's a question mark over, does Jack Stevens play? You know, and if he does play, he'll play instead of Ryan Manning. That's the way I kind of see it. If Flynn Downs is fit, he will start. And then, you know, there's the issue in midfield that we highlighted earlier with do you play David Brooks or do you play Aribo and Smallbone? So there's that to be decided. We know who two of the forwards will be, and the winger will be David Brooks if he's not in the midfield. So I think it's pretty certain. As I said, I think Sam Edozie put his hand up more than Ryan Fraser did yesterday. So I just find Ryan Fraser just a little bit too risk averse a lot of the time. Doesn't seem to take on a player often enough for me. He'll make space and whip across him with his right foot, or he'll, you know, sideways and backwards. I'd like to see him, you know, cutting across the box and having shots with his right foot, you know, and trying that occasionally, but he seems reluctant to do it. But yeah, I mean, it was qualified successes yesterday, and that's all you can say about it, because it was in the midst of a pretty ropey team performance and a bit of a strange atmosphere all round. But just going back to the point that you made, or that Steve was talking about there. I've said on a couple of podcasts, on this one and on other teams' podcasts, that if you'd asked me at the start of the season, bearing in mind where we were last year, new manager, new style of play, all that stuff, if someone had said you're going to finish fourth and be in the playoffs, I'd have snapped your hand off for it.
Mm-hmm.
Bearing in mind where we were, the disappointment is because we got ourselves in a position, even in this ridiculous season where you've had these 4 teams at the top getting ridiculous amounts of points. We got ourselves in a position to really make a run at it, and then we've blown it. And yeah, like you say, the timing of the sort of dreadful performances. But I mean, I agree partly with what Russell Martin says about the fixture pile up and the problems that has caused us, not only with players getting injured, which we kind of predicted would happen, but I think the Cardiff game was, you run on adrenaline playing every 3 days or whatever it is, and then the Cardiff game was the killer. And then since then, all the air went out of the balloon since then, and that's what's caused us to be, everyone to be somewhat down over I mean, obviously Leicester was pathetic, and yesterday wasn't much better. Stoke wasn't much better. So yeah, we've just got to hope that come the real stuff and the playoff against West Brom or Norwich, that everyone's fully energised and back on it. And it'll be interesting to see what we do against Leeds from the point of view that it's the first game we've had where there's been any sort of break. We've had
a week to prepare
for
now.
it.
Yeah.
I think it's just the first time since March that we've had that. Probably the game after the Fire postponement was probably the last time it happened. So yeah, it's not all doom and gloom, but a lot of things have to come together in order for it to be a positive end to the season. But Steve's point about all 4 playoff teams being pretty ropey at the moment is, put it this way, whoever goes up from the playoff is going to be the bookies' favourite to go straight back down next year.
Do you think? I think it's 11 games in 33 days, Alfie. Obviously, it's taken its toll on the players. Do you think it's taken its toll on everyone as well? Fans and supporters and the staff alike. We knew it was going to be pretty hectic, and it could have gone either way. But at the end of it, we're just I think we're all a bit exhausted by it all.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't done the maths. I don't know if it is 11 in. I know Russell Martin said that, but I think we only had 10 to finish the season. But either way, it's been a lot of games. Like Glen said, we've lost players through injuries. I think it's the emotional toll as well. He's absolutely right about sort of having been there and then out of it and then back in there again and then back out of it. That's obviously not easy. And I think that's probably my biggest worry that ahead of the last 2, 3, or hopefully 4 weeks is that pressure and frustration will do strange things to a dressing room and to a group of highly strung athletes who have a lot on the line, despite what people may think about whether they care or not. And I just worry that there's maybe some divisions or just upset fractures that could form that I think they've done so well to get rid of over the course of the season. The unbeaten run, obviously doing that, winning games constantly. And I know the mood at the training ground after losing to Cardiff was a little bit deflated. Obviously, it was going to be, but I think they felt the effect of that, and we've obviously seen then the 2 performances since as well. So I think it's a big job to try and just get everybody 100% on side. Obviously, we don't know what's going on behind closed doors, but it's been a lot of games. It's been a long time without rest, and just maybe a few days just to follow Neil Warnock's advice and go for a Chinese.
Chinese.
It might not be the worst thing in the world. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what we see on Saturday. But at the end of the day, the carrot in front of all of them, regardless of whatever they think, whatever's happened, is that it's still doable. And I think when that in 2 weeks' time it comes to Norwich away or West Brom away, whatever it is, I think they'll be pretty confident they can do it. I don't think their famous last words, but I think they will be feeling confident about the semi-final. I think obviously the final is a different kettle of fish, but I just think some of those younger players, younger lads, they'll be a little bit more fearless, and I think they'll think they've got enough to get over the line. So they've just got to find that within them, and we'll see what happens next weekend.
Reset and go again. Did anybody stay for the lap of honour? Alfie, I know you had to because that's your job. You got to write about these things, but we were in the gasworks by then, so saw what happened on social media afterwards. Steve, did you stay and give them a clap in the rain?
No, I was halfway down the stairs when they put the announcement out. It was like, well, I've already arranged to go to the pub. So
it was a strange one, wasn't it? It was really strange to do it after the game.
Yeah, a bit bizarre. Yeah, historically they always used to present that on the pitch like 10 minutes before kickoff. When it was the Echo running the award,
Yeah,
and they
we're old enough to remember the Daily Echo Player of the Season award that Tim Flowers used to win every year, and they'd always do it just before kickoff, wouldn't they? But that obviously changed in recent years to the end of season awards do. But I don't know if they'd be doing it after the final home game again. It just seems a bit odd to me.
Yeah, it's a strange one, but I mean, the thing is, if we didn't, I think part of the problem is that obviously everyone knows we've got another home game to come.
Yeah.
And that was guaranteed. So, but also at the same token, you're never going to be able to do it at the end of a second leg of a playoff semi-final, because everyone's either distraught or furious or whatever negative sort of emotion you've got at that point, having lost, or everybody's on the pitch.
Whisper it quietly. Everyone's on the pitch.
So it's you're never going to be able to do it in that scenario. So yeah, I don't quite understand why that was kind of what they wanted to do. But I guess not doing the award ceremony, because obviously they didn't do it last season for very obvious reasons. But this season they could easily have done that sort of glitzy.
I suppose it's when, though, isn't it?
Black tie do down at the club, and because obviously the women's team have had another good season, so you can kind of celebrate all of that. And yeah, it's strange given that it's usually a bit of a good fundraiser for the foundation as well. Those evenings.
It was Adam Armstrong, Glen, that got Player of the Season and Fans Player of the Season. You can't argue with that, really. I thought Flynn Downs might have been in with a shout.
He hasn't played enough to win it. I think that's the problem with Flynn Downs. He's obviously the most important player by a mile.
Yeah, I agree with Alfie about Flynn Downs, but I don't think it's going to go to a lone player, to be honest. So I think if you take the lone players out of it, you're probably looking at Adam Armstrong, maybe Kyle Walker-Peters, even though he's been ropey recently. So, yeah, I it's fair enough. I mean, I'm firmly of the opinion that if Adam Armstrong was a clinical striker, he'd have 35 goals in this team, not 20, not 22, 23, whatever it is. And he frustrates the hell out of me at times. But without him and without his goals and his assists, we wouldn't be anywhere near where we are. So I think it's fair enough for him to have won that award. To be honest, I mean, personally, even though he had a bit of a stinker yesterday, Taylor Howell-Bellis for me has been, or Jan Bednarek maybe could have made a shout for it, but he's sort of, I think the last few weeks he's obviously had his injury and then been out of the team a little bit, and so yeah, I mean, you always know with these things that it's probably the people, not necessarily the players, but when fans vote for things, it's usually the last sort of 10 games that that mean the most. So maybe that's why Bednarek and Walker-Peters dropped out the running. But yeah, no real issue with for me with Adam Armstrong winning it. He's had it. I think both Russell Martin and he himself will see that will think that he's had a decent season, and in the eyes of most people, he has.
Before we get on to preview the Leeds game, we need to do Player of the Week. She's going to be Slim Pickens again. Yeah. Alfie, do you want to put anybody forward?
Not especially. No,
I assume
not really.
we can rule out the away game this week. So this could be the first week we don't have.
Who's been good in both these games?
So let's just summarise what we're doing. So we're picking a player who's been the Player of the Week in a 5-0 defeat to Leicester and a 1-0 loss at home to Stoke.
And we haven't scored any goals.
So I mean, I personally don't think we should give one. But I mean, if you want me to force me one, I'll do the 3,000 fans that went to Leicester on Tuesday night.
The away fans. There's no real standout performers, I guess, Steve, is there?
No. Frankly, yeah. I mean, they're a little.
The referees or the
no, I mean you can't give it to the referee after Tuesday night.
Yeah,
or even the guy yesterday,
one that missed 3 penalties.
Yeah, I mean at least 1 penalty a piece, maybe 2 to us with the Edozie one, which I think is probably a slightly weaker claim.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean you might as well just draw it out of a tombola. Literally, just pick anybody. I mean. Flynn Downs' his reputation has once again sort of gone through the roof without even playing. I mean, he was on for 20 minutes yesterday, just as a bit of a jog around to get himself back up to speed. Other than that,
maybe Sudamana for his poetry on social media. That was,
Yeah, the seagulls follows the trawler.
Yeah, I'll sleep at that, I reckon.
I mean,
Let's-
McCarthy made some good saves yesterday, but then still shipped 5 on Tuesday. So it's
Playing 6 goals in a week.
Yeah,
and gets player of the week. You mentioned Dozy earlier, Glenn. Do you want to maybe stick his name down?
Well, just based on yesterday, you could do. I mean, someone who wasn't awful in either game. Well, I thought Will Smallbone, he made things better against Leicester, but all he had to do was be better than Rothwell, so that's not hard. And I thought he was one of our better players yesterday as well. He was at least sort of like trying to drive forward and make things happen. So he wasn't bad. Joe Aribo was kind of okay in both games, though his lack of fitness, he struggles. 70 minutes onwards, Leicester was he kind of died in the second half. So yeah, small bone in the dozy, but it's a very low bar.
Maybe we'll just call it this week the Someone Who Wasn't Awful Awards.
Yeah, perhaps.
And put those 2 names down.
Can I nominate anybody who hasn't sold their ticket for Leeds next Saturday?
There's a few, isn't there? There's quite a few.
Facebook and Twitter have been quite something the last week or so, haven't they?